Good evening, my dear students. Today we will discuss about the insects. On the very last turn, I discussed about the general characters of arthropoda. And I told you this arthropoda is the largest phylum in the animal kingdom, and the insecta, which is a class of this particular phylum, it is the largest class of the animal kingdom. Now the insects, they are very important for us. There is a saying that insects are extraordinary and we need them as recyclers, as pollinators, as food for others. I mean, there are large number of birds which feed on these insects. Now, as soon as the word insect comes to our mind, we start thinking of some insects which are very notorious and they are nuisance to us, like mosquitoes, house flies, etc. But apart from that, the insects are also very useful to the humankind and for this entire nature. Now these insects are extraordinary. Why I am saying that? It is because that these insects, they act as recyclers. You might have learned different biogeochemical cycles which occur in the nature, and these cycles, what they do is that the nutrients are recycled. A small animal or a small plant, throughout its age, it keeps on depositing the food in different chemical forms, and when the animal dies, after the death of the animal or the plant, the decomposition takes place, and then these nutrients are released in the nature. Now here, in this recycling of nutrients, these insects, they play an important role. The second is as pollinators. The world population, it is something around about 10 billion people. Now to feed this huge population of the world, we need food, we need fruits, we need different type of vegetables. Now all these things, they are pollinated by different insects. 86% of the total pollination which takes place in nature or in our crops is because of our insects. After the pollination, the fertilization takes place, and after the fertilization, we get beautiful fruits, beautiful vegetables, and all different types of cereals, grains, what we eat, what we feed upon, we all get because of the pollination, and these insects, they act as pollinators. Now third part, which is very important and which make these insects as extraordinary, is that they act as food for others. The large number of birds, they feed on different type of insects, and as per one calculation, about 500 million tons of insects are being fed by birds. You can see the figure, it is 500 million tons of insects. Meaning thereby, अगर इसको हम मनुष्य में कन्वर्ट करें तो ये इतना है कि एक चिड़िया एक वर्ष में एक पूरे अडल्ट ह्यूमन को खा सकती है वो, और फिर भी वो भूखी रह जाएगी. So by this you can make out that how much big figure is this, that 500 million tons of insects are being fed by the birds in 1 year. So all these three things, which are very important phenomenon for life and to sustain life on this planet, the recyclers, which help in the biogeochemical cycles, then as pollinators for crops, fruits and vegetables, and finally as food for others. Now there is a scientist E.O. Wilson. He is an American entomologist, and this Wilson he works on ants. चींटियों पे काम करते हैं ये, और इन्होंने बहुत सुंदर बात कही, if all mankind were to disappear, the world would regenerate back to the rich state of equilibrium that existed 10,000 years ago. If insects were to vanish, the environment would collapse into chaos. इसमें chaos बहुत से लोगों के लिए एक नया वर्ड होगा. इसका मतलब होता है अव्यवस्था. Means the things will shatter. If all the mankind were to disappear, means अगर इस पृथ्वी से, इस planet से अगर human race अभी समाप्त हो जाती है, खत्म हो जाती है, तो नेचर में किसी तरह का कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा, बल्कि नेचर अपने आप को रिवाइव कर लेगा और उस इक्विलिब्रियम की स्टेट में पहुंच जाएगा जो आज से 10,000 वर्ष पहले था. मतलब अगर अभी हम ह्यूमन रेस इस प्लेनेट से खत्म हो जाती है, तो इस एनवायरनमेंट में, नेचर में कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा, बल्कि हम इक्विलिब्रियम की उस स्टेट को प्राप्त कर लेंगे जो लगभग 10,000 वर्ष पहले थी. लेकिन ऑन द अदर हैंड, इफ इंसेक्ट्स वर टू वैनिश, द एनवायरनमेंट वुड कोलैप्स इनटू chaos. अगर इंसेक्ट्स खत्म हो जाते हैं या इंसेक्ट्स इस अर्थ से वैनिश हो जाते हैं, तो पूरे नेचर में, पूरे एनवायरनमेंट में एक कियोस हो जाएगा, एक अव्यवस्था फैल जाएगी. क्यों? क्योंकि ना तो फिर बायोजियोकेमिकल साइकिल्स रन कर पाएंगे अच्छी तरह से, ना पॉलिनेशन हो पाएगा. पॉलिनेशन ना होने की वजह से हमको क्रॉप्स नहीं मिलेंगी, सीरियल्स नहीं मिलेंगे, हमको वेजिटेबल्स नहीं मिलेंगे, हमको फ्रूट्स नहीं मिलेंगे. और जो हमारे नेचर में एक साइकिल रन करती है, जो फूड चेन रन करती है, फूड वेब होती है, उसमें एक बहुत बड़ा अंतर आ जाएगा, क्योंकि दे themselves, the insect, they themselves act as food for many birds. After having discussed the importance of insects, now we will discuss the insects and their characteristic features. Because as I told you earlier, that in the process of classification, first we have to examine a particular thing and we have to describe different type of characteristics of that particular animal. So if we have to define the insects, then we can define them as insects are tracheate arthropods in which the body is segmented with a relatively tough integument and jointed limbs. In my previous lecture, where we discussed the characteristic feature of arthropods, there I told you that this word arthropod has its origin in Greek language, where there are two words. Arthros means the jointed, and podos means limbs. So the insects, as they are part of this phylum Arthropoda, the important class of Arthropoda, so they have jointed limbs and they are tracheate arthropods. Means here the respiratory system, the process of respiration takes place through the spiracles, and these openings, they have a network of trachea inside the body of the earth form, through which the oxygen is supplied to different parts of the body. So they are tracheate arthropods, and body is segmented. They are segmented in nature, and tough integument is there. Tough integument means it is made up of protein called chitin, and this chitin, it makes the integument tough. The another important character, if we say that the body is bilaterally symmetrical and triploblastic. We have already discussed when we were discussing the general characters of arthropods, that bilaterally symmetrical means that there is one line through which if we cut a particular animal, then we get two mirror images of one another. That condition is known as bilaterally symmetrical. And the triploblastic means that during the course of development we come across three membranes, that is ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm, and rest of the structures and rest of the parts development takes place through these basic primary germ layers, ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. So condition here in the case of insects is triploblastic. Then the body is again divided into three distinct regions. We have got head, then the thorax, and then the part of the abdomen. The head is generally made up of 6 embryonic segments, thorax of 3 segments, and abdomen we get about, there are 7 to 11 segments in the abdomen part. The exoskeleton or the integument is rigid and flexible. Now this rigidity and flexibility is because it is made up of chitin. So this chitin makes the integument tough, and therefore the integument of the insect, it also acts as an exoskeleton. Now there is a pair of antennae situated near the eyes except in the order Protura. Means antenna is a characteristic feature of all the insects, but there is an order called Protura. It's an apterygod order where the wings are not there. So in this order Protura we do not find antenna. So it's an exception that the order Protura does not contain the antenna. Then the anterior region of the head is provided with mouth parts. Now here we call them as mouth parts because we are having labrum, then labium is there, mandibles are there, maxilla is there, and hypopharynx is there. So all these structures combinedly they form the mouth, and we call them as mouth parts. Now these mouth parts, they are of different type. They were biting and chewing type, they may be sponging type, they may be lapping type. So there are different, in different insects, as per the nature of feeding, we have got different type of mouth parts. When we come to the mouth parts part, we will discuss all these different type of mouth parts in detail. Now, head is formed by the fusion of 6 embryonic segments. Thorax consists of 3 segments, in which it is prothorax, mesothorax and metathorax. And all these 3 segments, prothorax, mesothorax and metathorax, the 3 pair of limbs are found in these 3 parts. So 1 pair of limb in prothorax, 1 pair of limb in mesothorax and 1 pair of limb in metathorax. So this is also an important character of the insects, that insects has got 3 pairs of legs or 3 pairs of limbs, and these limbs are present in the thorax region, prothorax, mesothorax and metathorax. Similarly, we have got 2 pair of wings. Now these 2 pair of wings are present in mesothorax and in the metathorax. So again, this is also a very important character. When we define an insect, we generally say that insect is an organism which is having 3 pairs of legs and 2 pairs of wings. Though exceptions are also there. We know there are 4 different orders, and there are insects which do not have wings at all, and there are insects which have got only 1 pair of wing. Other pair of wing is modified in different other parts. Now abdomen consists of 7 to 11 segments. Similarly, the alimentary canal is complete, means in the anterior region the proper mouth is there or the mouth parts are there, and in the posterior part we have got the anus. So alimentary canal is a tubular structure and it is complete. And the circulatory system is of open type, which means that blood is circulated in the body through the lateral openings of the heart known as ostia. Then we come to the next characteristic feature, that is the blood in the case of insects is devoid of red blood cells and is yellowish green in color. Generally the blood is of red color, and it is because of the presence of RBC, and as RBCs they contain a pigment called hemoglobin, which is a respiratory pigment, and it helps in the transportation of oxygen. Whereas in the case of insects, the color of the blood is yellowish green, which means the hemoglobin is absent and the RBCs are not present. Here we find another compound called erythropoietin. Erythropoietin. Now this pigment, there is a controversy regarding this erythropoietin being the respiratory pigment, because the oxygen binding capacity of this compound is very, very low. So we can't regard it as the respiratory pigment. And as I told you earlier, here the mechanism of respiration in the case of insects is a bit different, and we find a tracheal system. The respiratory system consists of trachea, which open exteriorly by means of pair spiracles. So there is a network of trachea inside the body of the insects, with the help of which it transports the oxygen. And that's why on the just before some time I told you there's these insects, they are also known as tracheid arthropods. So it is only because the respiratory system consists of trachea, and these trachea they open outside by means of spiracles. Now the nervous system is composed of ganglionic masses interconnected by nerve cord. We don't have the concept of brain and spinal cord here, but some ganglia they accumulate and they form different, like cerebral ganglia, ganglionic mass, thoracic ganglionic mass, different type of ganglions. They give us different ganglionic masses. So the nervous system is still not well developed, and just we see it in form of ganglionic masses, and these ganglionic masses they are interconnected with each other with the help of nerve cord. Now the next point is that the excretion, it takes place by means of malpighian tubules, and these malpighian tubules are found on the junction of midgut and hindgut. In some insects, if you see the alimentary canal while dissecting the insect, you can't differentiate between the midgut and the hindgut. So the presence of these malpighian tubules, it just demarcates the position of the where the midgut ends and the hindgut starts. So at the junction of midgut and hindgut, these malpighian tubules are found, which help in the process of excretion. Then we have got specific cells called nephrocytes. These cells they also help in the process of excretion. And apart from these two structures, the integument of the insect, it also helps in the excretion, because in the case of insects, the process of molting takes place, and in the molting, the outermost integument is discarded by the insect, and with that removal of the insect integument, the toxic materials or all the toxic substances or the excretory waste which is accumulated in the integument, it is also thrown away by the insects. So in this way, indirectly, the integument also helps in the process of excretion, as the insects go for regular molting phases. Their reproduction is usually sexual, sometimes it is viviparous and parthenogenetics. Means they give birth to the new young ones. And this parthenogenesis is generally common in the case of plants, where without the fertilization, the production of the fruit takes place. But in insects also, like in honeybees, we come across parthenogenesis, where without fertilization, without the sexual intercourse, the young ones are formed. So some insects, they also show the process of parthenogenesis. Now sexes are generally separate, but it may be hermaphrodite, means both have male and female sex organs, may be present in the same body, like in Putney cushion scale, which is an insect. The scientific name is Aiseria purchasei. This is an example of insect where both male and female sex organs are present in the same body. So the condition becomes hermaphrodite, though generally the sexes are separate. Now another term, which is the metamorphosis, it is present. In the case of development of insects, generally we come across a stage, the young ones, where the young ones are entirely different from the adult, and we call them as larva. So when the larva comes in the life cycle of an individual or an organism, we call that development as metamorphosis. So generally, as a rule, the metamorphosis is present almost in all the insects, except those where the viviparity may be there or parthenogenicity may be there. Otherwise, in most of the insects, we come across the metamorphosis, which is a type of development where the larva comes into play, and larva comes in the life cycle of that particular organism. The sensory organs include compound eyes, the auditory organs, olfactory organs means the organs which are sensitive to smell, then tactile organs, organs which are sensitive to touch, and gustatory organs, like the chemical nature of the food is tasted by these gustatory organs, and in certain insects, very common example of jugnu, which we see in the night, is where we come across the light producing organs. So in the last, we can conclude that insects are very important for nature, and if someone asks you that how you can define an insect, then the very simple answer is that any organism having 3 pairs of legs and 2 pairs of wings, that organism will be called as insect, with some exceptions. As I told you that there are insects which do not have wings at all. There are insects which simply have 1 pair of wings. So that's all for the lecture. Thank you very much.